Hello and welcome to the 2017 World Predictions with Joni Patry. This is a very exciting year for us because Joni is able to look into the entire next year and give us some pretty in-depth details about what she sees headed our way. But first, we have the wonderful opportunity to take a really brief look backward at 2016 because Joni had some phenomenal hits right on target with her predictions. And we're just going to take a look at a couple of those before we begin looking into the new year. So, hello, Joni. Are you ready?
Hi, Victoria. It's good to be here again.
Yeah, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Okay, well, 2016, you had some phenomenal hits. And the first one that comes to my mind is your prediction because of the position of Regulus. You said a king was coming, and you were very specific in your 2016 world predictions at this time last year.
Yeah.
You were quite clear that it was not perhaps a king being born at that time, but a king that was going to come into our world awareness, our world consciousness. And boy, were you right on with that, weren't you?
Right. You see, it was around the spring of 2015 that I noted that that summer there was going to be a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter on the fixed star Regulus. And this conjunction isn't that rare, but on the fixed star Regulus, which is in the constellation of Leo, is rare. And they surmised that the three wise men were following this star that a king was born. And this star was, what they surmised, is the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus, but at this time in Leo. And I saw this coming up and I thought something big is going to happen. Someone's going to come into power, or someone will be born that will change the world in some way. So, not knowing what it actually meant, I did that video, and believe it or not, when they came together on that day, Donald Trump announced his bid for his run for the presidency. I was floored. I was like, what does this mean? This has to mean that he is going to influence the world in a powerful way, because that was the day he announced his run for the presidency. And you know, I was as surprised as everyone else.
Well, it really was astounding, and it has proved to be exactly what you predicted. It's a game changer. It's a global consciousness changer, and could continue to prove to be so. But boy, that was the big hit for me in terms of thinking on 2016 and what you predicted. Yeah. You also had another hit with the, you said there would be a medical cure that would happen in 2016. And, you know, here we have a cure for the Ebola virus.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that wonderful? And I suspect there's going to be a lot more cures coming about this year. We have some, and that's probably the most exciting thing that I see for 2017. Some major cures of disease, and diseases that have been really, really hard to cure. Because when I think of diseases that are really hard to cure, I think of mental diseases such as addictions and, you know, bipolar, all of these diseases that affect the mind that we know so little about. There's going to be some revelations with this, but also major strides in curing major diseases. And yeah, think about all the suffering that the cure for Ebola will bring about in terms of what's been going on in Africa and things like that.
That's really awesome. And then you spoke of Turkey last year, and you indicated that country would be going through some major political struggles and strife. And indeed, with the government in power, it was nothing but struggles and strife. So you hit that one right on the head too.
Right, around August, we had the Saturn-Mars conjunction on the fixed star Antares, and Antares is the star of war. So this brought about all these incredibly difficult things that happened in Turkey, and not to mention all over Europe. It was a very difficult year, and I'm afraid we do have more to come with that.
Well, and you also saw, unfortunately, more problems on the terrorist front for the countries of France and Germany. And you were completely accurate, unfortunately, being subjected to terrorism last year.
Yes. The attack in France, it was around the time of the Saturn-Mars conjunction again during the summer months. And then again, I knew that Germany was going to be hit, and later in the year it was. So we have a lot more to look forward to that, unfortunately, in Europe. Mm-hmm.
Well, those are only a handful of the many predictions that you had exactly right for 2016. Mm-hmm. And after that brief look back, I'm anxious to know what you're seeing for 2017. So are you ready to enlighten us?
I am ready. We have lots to look forward to. And I think a lot of people are so afraid of what 2017 is going to bring with this new president. But I think you're going to be really, really surprised. And I think it's going to be very good in many, many respects. And once we go over all the different countries, we will see more. But one thing I want to interject here briefly is the fact that a lot of this information that I'm speaking about, I write about in our magazine, Astrologic Magazine. And we also have for sale the individual sign predictions if you will go on to astrologicmagazine.com. We have many incredible astrologers that write for this magazine, and I have to say I'm very, very proud that Victoria and I created this magazine together. It's a wonderful magazine.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do, and it's really incredible the people who enjoy contributing to it as well as subscribing to it. And it's always such a delight to get the current issue and see what's coming up. It's really an incredible peek into the future, isn't it?
It is. And, writing for it monthly keeps me busy understanding the planets and what's going on. One more plug I want to add is I have a university where I teach Vedic astrology, and it gives a certification. We have a new starting date. It is January 10th, so check into that. And if you're serious about learning Vedic astrology, this is the answer. So let's dig in now for what's going to be happening in this exciting new year of 2017. I've been talking about January being a very difficult month. Yes, it is. And as we approach the new year, we have the conjunction of Mars, Neptune, and Ketu. This is a big trigger for terrorism, for events that are very dangerous. And I believe that there is some major concerns between January 1st, where Mars is exactly conjunct Neptune. Things that have been secret, have been hidden, are coming out in the world. This is huge. And throughout the whole month of January, all the way to inauguration, there's going to be violence and chaos. And even the day of inauguration, I noticed that Mars will be at the very tail end of Aquarius. And then it's going to go into Pisces, where the 0 degrees Pisces is very turbulent to the United States chart that I use. It's 0 degrees of Pisces to the 0 degrees of Gemini in the United States chart. So there's violence in the US, there's problems. And not to mention, we're going to be going over Donald Trump's chart is very, very activated throughout this year. And good and bad ways. So I will bring up those just so we can be prepared, because what I find is when I look at the charts of rulers of different countries, I can see what's going on for the country. I've done this for Turkey, I've done this for France, and I also have done this for Germany, looking at their rulers. So I'll be talking about that quite a lot. And most of all, if I might talk about what the biggest changes are that are happening this year, is that there's going to be the Uranus and Jupiter opposition in the signs of Virgo, Pisces. And with this is why I say there's going to be some amazing discoveries in health and healing and cures for disease. And it's going to really tip off in the month of February. What I'm finding in February is that there's going to be some major secrets revealed. As I always talk about the eclipses, at the time of the eclipses, when we have the sun and the moon come together in a solar eclipse and then a lunar eclipse, it's like the lights have been extinguished, and in the darkness, out comes something we didn't know about. So with that, we're looking at the solar eclipse that's going to be happening February 26th. During this time, it's going to be around 14 degrees of Aquarius. And what I find happens that month also is that Jupiter and Uranus will exactly oppose, of course, during Pisces and Virgo, and this represents cures. But here's the most interesting thing that I think is phenomenal about this year, that Jupiter is going to station February 6th at 29 degrees of Virgo. This is the degree of the fixed star Spica, the best and most auspicious star of the heavens. Jupiter's station sits on it. What does that mean? Well, Spica is the star of the arts, of literary genius, but I have found that people that have planets on this become an overnight sensation. And to be an overnight sensation, I looked at Sylvester Stallone, he has his moon there, and Justin Bieber's has his moon at 0 degrees of Libra, which is within a degree of this star. And overnight, they became stars. So you're going to find some people that just come out of the blue and become famous overnight. And I'm hoping that this could be relative to Donald Trump, maybe, that his work could excel and grow and become more on a positive note than the negative note that was going on throughout the elections and around inauguration. This also is reflective of the cures and diseases that are going to come out, the cures of disease, I mean. So watch for that. February will be a bit magical, I think, in many ways. And there will be some secrets revealed, not only about Trump, but about the opponents. And I say that because this is happening in Aquarius. I look at the leaders in charge as the sign of Leo. And you see, what's happening is the sign of Aquarius is what's being triggered. You're going to find that in the summer months, when we come towards the sign of Leo, there'll be more things revealed about the president, not only Trump, but around the world. So I think the first 6 months will be relatively new beginning starts, and it will be positive. It'll be more positive than most people want to believe. So I'm also looking at, in February, because of this eclipse, this is an opportunity for spirituality. Spirituality in the deepest sense of the word is going to come out. And you're going to see people being more aware. There'll be more movies that come out that tell the truth, that inspire people and move people towards a higher consciousness, because this is really why we're here, to grow in awareness and consciousness. And there are so many opportunities this year for this. And I love the month of February in terms of change and transformation, because we're at the time of the eclipse energy. So then as we roll into the month of March, things are going to change somewhat. There could be more of an economic crisis. One thing I get from this opposition of Jupiter and Uranus, this deals with major highs and lows in the stock market. So you see, it's not going to just be an economic crash. There's going to be big spikes up and big spikes down throughout this year. And I definitely get that from this opposition and the fixed star Spica, because Spica is so positive. Some good things have to come out of this year, have to. And I'm looking at, in March, there, Uranus, the planet of change and disruption, will move into the very last degree of Pisces. Now, when planets are at the last degrees of a water sign, this is called Gandanta. Gandanta simply means drowning. And what that equates to for me is losing control. But literally, there will be more floods, there will be more storms, there will be more, catastrophic things happening with water. So watch that March, the weather will be severe and there will be turbulent storms that will arise. And I want you to know that there will be drastic means to create more protection throughout the world in many countries. So this is the month that protection will begin, maybe in the United States, maybe with immigration laws and things like that will begin to change, that it will be starting to come into being. Now, another thing I want to mention is Venus. Venus turns retrograde this year, and Venus is the planet that goes retrograde the very least out of all the planets. And as Venus goes retrograde, it of course brings up issues concerning love, romance, and people from the past. When planets go retrograde, it's an opportunity to bring up the things from the past. So Venus going back means old loves or old feelings or sentiments, memories will come up for everyone concerning old love affairs, regardless if people do or do not come into your life concerning these issues. So Venus is going to be in Pisces. Pisces is its sign of exaltation. This is fantastic. So Venus also rules finances and money. So as it goes retrograde throughout the spring months, this is where the economy is going to be the most extreme. So pay attention. Now, I also want you to know that when I was going into the month of March, as we have planets that go into their Gandanta degrees, Saturn is another planet that will be going into the very last degrees of Scorpio, and that is Gandanta. So we're going to be talking about that a lot. But going back to Venus, Venus will turn retrograde on March 4th, and this will be at 19 degrees of Pisces, and then again, it will go direct April 15th at 2 degrees of Pisces. But most importantly, it will stay in the sign of Pisces for a little over 4 months. The very end of January through the very beginning of June. So Venus in the sign is important. While it is retrograde though, because it's exalted, it starts to operate dysfunctionally, like a debilitated planet. So remember, between March 4th and April 15th, this is going to be the time that there's going to be problems in the economy and things are going to shift and change. It's going to be difficult. Okay, but before that and after that, that's where it's going to pick up again. Why? Because Venus is the planet of wealth, money, love, romance. So all of these affairs before it goes retrograde and after it goes retrograde will be positive in terms of love and money. Okay, so another thing is I noticed that the new moon in March is going to be, that's the new moon in Pisces. That's the chart that we look at for the predictions of the year, and I'm going to be referring to that somewhat when we look at the different countries. So one more thing that I think is important, this Uranus-Jupiter opposition can deal with bringing out the issue of extraterrestrials. So I think that whether or not the government comes out and accepts it and recognizes it, there are going to be so many more sightings coming up. Wait and see. And I think, there's going to be a lot of proof, although a lot of people, just remember this, people believe what they want to believe. With all the facts, they still won't believe. So that's how I see this unfolding.
Joni, they have so many planets. It's like a new exoplanet is discovered almost every month.
Wow. Well, that's important, because when planets become discovered, whatever they represent is what becomes part of our conscious awareness on Earth. Just as when Neptune came into being, photography was discovered. Uranus came into being, it was the industrial revolution. Pluto, atomic energy. So I don't know what it means yet, but let me tell you, hindsight is always 20/20. But another thing that's important is that there is a comet that is supposed to be visual for the first time on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Comets are signals for something coming in the future. And so a lot is about to change. So let me continue on with April. April is going to be when Mercury is going to be retrograde in Aries. And you see, this whole year, Mercury will retrograde in fire signs. And that represents action. Things are going to be going quicker, faster into the future. And this is what so many things have kind of been in a stalemate for so long. Now they're going to start shooting forward. But Mercury in retrograde in Aries in April, things will go haywire. I think it's a lot to do with the weather and storms. Another thing is that there will be a building of violence that will start to happen. Mars will start to travel with the sun beginning in May. And when Mars starts to travel with the sun, anger starts to heat up. Mars is the planet of war. So May through July, there's going to be some major situations that heat up with anger and violence again. We can't escape it. It's here to stay, I think. Another thing, though, when I'm looking at the month of April, April 7th, Uranus will go into Aries, and it will stay there for the next 7 years. And when Uranus goes into Aries, it's going to be conjunct 0 Aries, which is called this is the point that deals with the world, 0 Aries. So something big is changing this year, in case you didn't figure that out. But I know that we know something big is on its way, and this is the initiation of Uranus, which is the planet of change, in the sign of Aries, which is change and new beginnings. And we're going to see everything is about to shift this year. By the end of this year, I can promise you, the world will be a completely and totally different place. So also in April, Jupiter will oppose Venus. This is good for money. And throughout May, Jupiter will finally come to its exact opposition with Venus. So let's go over May. May is where the violence will start to kick in. There will be things building, and it will build all the way through August till we have the next solar eclipse, which will be very violent. But I will say May, Venus is still in Pisces. It's good time for love, romance. Venus is no longer retrograde, so relationships will begin to work out and things will start to move forward in the area of money and romance. But I do feel that by the month of June, great fear is building, because then we have the sun and the moon coming towards their conjunction. And Mars will be opposed Pluto during this time. So this is a major change. And what I'm going to talk about, you will find that the country Turkey will have many changes going on in the month of June. I'm going to get to each country that I've done charts for. But great fear, and I will say this, there will be great turbulence. Now, Saturn, as I said, will be Gandanta, and it is Gandanta most of this entire year, meaning in the last degree of water. So when Saturn goes to its very last degree of Scorpio, it affects our country deeply, because that is the degree that Donald Trump has his sun in 29 degrees of Taurus and his moon at 28 degrees of Scorpio. So this affects his chart, and this will be a difficult time for him, initially in the beginning of the year, as well as around the times of June, and then again August and October. Very difficult for the United States and Trump. I have to be honest with what's going on in these charts and what I see. So Saturn, let's see, Saturn will be in the sign of Sagittarius this year, but it will revert back to Scorpio for about 4 months. Let me see, this will happen, okay, hold on just 1 second. Saturn will revert back into the sign of Scorpio. Let me get this straight so you'll know. I believe it is, I've got it here. Well, it will go into Sagittarius on January 27th, and then it will revert back into Scorpio June 22nd through October 27th. And right around these times will be when Saturn is at the last degrees of water, and that's turbulent. Remember I said that this portion, Scorpio, is conjunct the stinger or of the scorpion, the tail of the scorpion, and this represents danger and fear, and this could deal with something to do with poisons in our environment, maybe ways that people can, you know, I hope it's not nuclear, but it could be something of this poisonous faction, but I think it has more or less to do with poison warfare or things like that. So people, please be aware that this year will be treacherous like this. So going to the eclipse in August, I'm looking at the month of August. Mercury will be retrograde in Leo, and more than anything, this eclipse affects many countries, and specifically the United States, because it will occur at 4 degrees of Leo, almost exactly conjunct Donald Trump's natal Mars in his first house. So yes, this is a dangerous time for him, and he is going to have to really kick into gear, which is going to be hard for him, but he's going to have to kick into gear in terms of his rulings, and particularly how he's going to handle some dangerous events and threats to the United States. So that's a tough one. Another date that I feel is important to remember is around July 21st, because that's going to be when Mars and the Sun exactly conjoin at 10 degrees of Cancer. Now, all of this in the United States chart is occurring in the 8th house, so this is going to affect the United States economy. Will be major downs, but remember, major ups. Another thing about September is very interesting because we have Neptune opposed Mars, and they are also aspecting, Saturn is involved in some Saturn going back and forth in the sign of Scorpio and in the sign of Sagittarius. Remember when Saturn first entered into Scorpio, which was in November, I believe in 2014? I think so. But at this time, that's when the oil prices dropped. It could have been 2015. Saturn's in a sign for 2.5 years. But because it's going to be leaving the sign of Scorpio, which caused the oil prices to go way down, going into Sagittarius is going to bring the oil prices up. But it's going back and forth, so will these prices in oil till it stays in the sign of Sagittarius, which is the end of October. So there's going to be a war concerning oil around the month of September. Wait and see. This is going to be what the root of a lot of these pressing issues are going to be about, worldwide prices of oil and how we deal with it. So moving into the month of, like I said, September is going to be a time when we have what's going on called Akala Sarpa Yoga. This means that all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu, excluding the outer planets. And this means there's many crises and things happen that are of a fated manner, and this will affect the world at hand. So September, October are huge turning points. You're going to see the world change at this point. Why? Because in September, we have Rahu and Ketu. Rahu's going to move into Cancer, Ketu in Capricorn, and Jupiter's going to move into Libra. When Jupiter moves into Libra, this will bring more peace. This will bring more justice and fairness in the world because it is the sign of peace and justice. Libra brings balance. So in legal matters, this will bring balance as well. And so I want you to know that things are going towards a good trend. But as Rahu goes into Cancer, it's going to be major things change with the economy in the world, and especially the United States. So what I'm looking at is October and even November. November will come great clarity. All the things I've been talking about in terms of the disruption and people not understanding the truth will be very clear. We will know who is at odds and who's been causing these problems. So the truth comes out. By December, Mercury will be retrograde in Sagittarius, and this will bring the truth out. As I see, Jupiter will be trine Neptune, and this will bring out positive changes in the economy. So as we go through this tremendous year of major ups and downs, eventually towards the end, we're going to have a time of peace and balance, because Jupiter will be in Libra from September of 2017 through October of 2018. And I see some major trends that are very positive in 2018. So let me bring on the different countries. Do you have any questions about any of this, Victoria?
You know, Joni, I know that when we were discussing this, you and I, that you had a specific concern about a place over January and the New Year's holiday time in New York City, that I wonder if you're wanting to specifically mention.
Well, I think it's well and good, because you know, I am seeing right now, it's New Year's Eve as we speak, that they're putting tremendous efforts out to protect New York City, which I definitely felt like this was the place that could be a threat. So by bringing all these things out, we can prevent things. And that's the whole purpose of bringing this all out, not to be wrong or right with prediction, but to prevent things from happening. We don't want innocent people harmed. So I put this prediction out repeatedly that this is an extremely dangerous time. And when I was in a dream, very clearly, what came to my mind was the word Madison Square Garden. I don't know if that means it's a place of danger or violence, and it could happen at any point this year, but please, you know, be careful around this area, okay? And another thing that came in a dream was I saw a lot of storms in England. And I don't know if that's literal, major weather and storms, or if it means, and generally it's figurative, that there could be some things brewing in this country that are of a violent nature. Okay, so let's begin with the USA. So with the USA, I used the chart of July 4th, 1776, And one thing I do want to point out is looking at that chart, as Jupiter does go into Libra, so you see here's where we're headed towards. As Jupiter goes into the sign of Libra, it's going to start to aspect all of the United States planets in a positive way. It's going to trine the Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Sun. So something very good is brewing to happen over the next few years. But right now, we do have transiting Pluto exactly opposed the Sun in the United States chart. This represents major upheaval, transformation, and change concerning politics and a political leader, which has to be our president. Pluto it's a volatile planet. So I'm hoping that this is change in a good way and not a bad way. But this, because we have to hope the best for our country. Here's the thing, we may all have different opinions about who we think represents us and who our leaders are. But remember this, we all want the same thing. And that is the best for our country. Please, let's start looking at where there's likenesses in each other instead of differences. And the likenesses are, we want the best. So let's pray and let's focus in on the very best happening for the world and whatever country that you live in. And the more anger that you put out there, remember, the more anger that you will receive back in your own life. So let's come from a place of peace and love. So the United States moon is at 7 degrees of Aquarius, where K2 is crossing in the month of April and March. So this is a very difficult time. And the moon in this chart is in the 3rd house, dealing with transit. So it could deal with transportation, places where there's trains, places where there's buses, cars, or airplanes, of course. This is where the turbulence comes in, and this is in the months of around March and April, that there could be some violence here. But also Donald Trump's chart, April, Donald Trump, remember, the danger really comes for him when Rahu crosses over his ascendant in Mars, which will be around the time of the eclipse, which is August 21st of 2016. Okay.
17.
Excuse me, you're right. Thank you. Can't get used to being 2017 yet, can I? Okay, so let us start with England. As I said, England, I do see some turbulence and problems, especially concerning the economy. So that's something I want people to be very aware of there, that the first half of the year, there is many, many changes that are going to be happening that can bring problems to England, but the second half will be better. They will be alienated by other countries. I guess this is probably with the Euro and Brexit and all of these things that have been happening throughout the year. So the next chart I have in hand is Japan. Japan has been going through a really rough time, but things are about to get better for Japan. And there's going to be major improvements throughout the time when Saturn leaves Scorpio for Japan. But the second part of the year will be much, much better for Japan. But of course, it's only temporary. So I don't see where they're going to have as many earthquakes as they had before. Okay. Talking about France, this is interesting. When I pulled up their president, Hollande, I found that he may not be reelected. Now, I have nothing I have no opinion about the French president, so this is good. But I do see that his term may be ending at some point. And I think their elections are due to be happening soon. So a new government is going to be making a big difference. This is for France. And also I'm looking at that France will have an allegiance with the US. They're going to come together and be closer and work together. But overall, France is going to be going through some difficult times, but I think things will vastly, vastly improve for France. And I think it's because of a new leadership. Okay, so next let's talk about Russia. Vladimir Putin, boy, does he have a chart going on here. His Mercury is 29 degrees of, guess what, Virgo. So Jupiter sits right on his Mercury. He's having a grand time. He's happy about what's going on in this world for him. It's a good turn of events for him. And I also found, looking at their chart and his chart, that their technology is leaps and bounds better than we know right now. So they are very advanced, and we don't even know how advanced they are right now. That's what I'm seeing. So they are going to have a rise, but there will be a major fall in 2018 where they will have financial problems. So Russia's going to do well for the first half of the year, but the second half of the year is not going to be as good for them. Iran, I get that there's not that many changes happening there. They will have their fair share of financial problems, but they are wanting to change, and I get a lot of their restrictions will be lessened, and they will become more open with many countries that they were closed off to. North Korea, they always seem to be in the news, and they will continue to be in the news. They are going to be a threat this summer, definitely. When North Korea, Saturn for their chart is 5 degrees of Leo, and that is where that eclipse occurs. So keep an eye on North Korea. They are always a source of trouble. And their leader, there are problems concerning their homeland, and if they're not careful, they're going to be the ones that could be attacked. Okay, so now let's talk about Syria. My God, Syria has just been completely destroyed. It's so sad. And noticing their chart, they have the moon in ascendant at 22, 23 degrees of Gemini, where Pluto has been opposing it. So there's no wonder that their country has been completely annihilated and destroyed. Their president, Al-Assad, Neptune is hitting very important planets in his chart, actually his natal Saturn. He's not telling the truth. He's not being upfront. He's not being honest. So be aware that I do think the worst is definitely over for Syria, but their leader is not being upfront, and that is the cause of a lot of their problems. Brazil, many vast improvements, and the stress, everything will improve and get better. Rulership is changing as well for them, but it's for the better. Now, Turkey. So looking at Turkey, I said before, their problems are not over. There's going to be more attacks, more problems, because the moon for the Turkish chart is 7 degrees of Gemini, where Ketu is aspecting it throughout the spring months. So March and April is very, very difficult for Turkey. And looking at their leader, Erdogan, he has Venus and Mercury at 20 degrees of Aquarius. This is where Neptune is going to be stationing around the months of May and June. So I gotta say, he is not being honest about something. And this could be some of their problems, that he is denying and not being realistic about the future, okay? China looks like they're unaffected. Their economy actually rises. And one thing is, 2018 may not be that good for China, but 2017 will be. And they will probably lose their protection in the second half of the year. But overall, I don't see any major problems except for pollution in China. Germany. This is a very difficult year. And I get that it has more problems concerning immigration and the people there. And and another thing, Angela Merkel, their president, has natal Mars at 3 degrees of Sagittarius, where Saturn will be stationing in the spring. So expect more problems and events and probably terrorism in Germany. India, we have a lot of viewers here from India. So India looks like they're going to be involved in big problems, losses in the economy, and they are taking steps backwards. I believe this has a lot to do with their leader, Narendra Modi, because looking at his chart, he has Venus at 15 degrees of Leo, where these eclipses have been occurring last September and this coming February. And it's affecting his vision about the economy and how things are meant to go. Okay, next. I don't know if this is working. I think it's going. There we go. Something was going on with the recording device, but we're back on. So if you missed anything I was saying about India, India's in for a big change in the economy. There's going to be extremes, and they're going to have to beef up their protection because there will start to be some attacks there. But most of all, their economy is going to shift, especially in the second part of the year when Rahu comes over all of those planets in the Indian chart where they have the planets in Cancer. So that pretty much wraps up all the countries that I wanted to process and go over, and all the predictions of this great year of 2017. And I will be doing some YouTubes monthly to dig in deeper into all of these details. So do you have any questions from all of this, Victoria?
Well, and you will always be doing your monthly aspects and predictions on Astrologic Magazine, which is astrologicmagazine.com. And you get really in detail on those aspects and predictions. Plus, you always write your beautiful spiritual insights, which correlate with what is going on in the aspects and predictions that you have. So it's such a well-rounded monthly overview of what's coming up that everything that you just spoke of will be more in-depth monthly as each month arrives.
Exactly. Good. Well, thank you for mentioning that. So with that, I guess we'll close and we'll see what's going to be unfolding here in this exciting year. But most of all, I want to say it's going to be a good year. Things that needed to change are going to change. And that's going to create progress because I see this whole evolvement coming through for the year of 2018. So what's happening now is setting us up for a better future in 2018.
It's all so very exciting. Well, thank you so much, Joni, and thank you for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate you putting in the time to enlighten yourselves, to continue this quest that this community of astrology that Joni takes a lot of time to look into. I know you appreciate what she does, and we appreciate you in return. So have a fabulous 2017.
Thank you.